It began with a whisper, a quiet murmur of frustration that spread from Boston's docks to Virginia's farms. For generations, colonists saw themselves as loyal English subjects, carving out lives in a new world. They fought alongside British soldiers, believing they were part of the same imperial family. But with every new decree from London, that bond frayed. The colonists saw a parliament in which they had no voice, a government treating them as a resource, not kin. The whisper of frustration grew into open conversations and radical pamphlets. The unthinkable idea took root. Perhaps they were not Englishmen but something new, something American. Imagine a farmer reading a smuggled broadside or a merchant tallying losses from another trade law, their loyalty eroding. This was about more than money. It was about dignity and the right to shape their own destiny. The sense of betrayal deepened as the crown treated them as children to be managed, not partners to be heard. The murmur of discontent became a chorus of defiance. The colonies were awakening to the realization that their cherished bond with Britain was one-sided. The stage was set for a conflict that would challenge the greatest empire in the world. The air crackled with tension, frightening, exhilarating, and impossible to ignore. The seeds of revolution were sown in the soil of disappointment and hope. Soon the world would witness a new identity forged in the fires of resistance. After the costly 7 Years' War, Britain looked to its colonies to help pay the bill. The crown saw it as fair. The war had protected colonial frontiers, so the colonists should contribute. But the colonists saw only an infringement on their rights. Taxation without representation is tyranny, became their rallying cry. English law held that taxes required representation, but the colonists had none in Parliament. Britain argued for virtual representation. But to Americans, it was a hollow excuse. Every tax became a test of sovereignty, a struggle over who truly held power. For Britain, it was about control. For the colonists, it was about defending their rights as freeborn Englishmen. The crown's grip tightened, but in doing so it pushed the colonists further away. The question of allegiance was now a question of identity and freedom. The Stamp Act of 1765 made the debate over taxes personal. It required a royal stamp on nearly every piece of paper. Newspapers, contracts, even playing cards. Everyone felt its reach. It was a daily reminder of their lack of voice. Outrage erupted. Lawyers, merchants, and printers led protests and boycotts. The Sons of Liberty formed, ensuring the act was unenforceable. Parliament repealed the Stamp Act under pressure but passed the Declaratory Act, asserting total authority over the colonies. The crisis seemed over, but the real conflict was only clarified. The crown had retreated but not surrendered its claim to power. The colonists celebrated but missed the warning. Parliament still claimed the right to rule them in all cases. The seeds of unity and resistance had been planted. The struggle was no longer just about taxes, it was about who would decide the future of America. The lines were drawn, and the next confrontation was inevitable. The revolution's fuse was lit. The fragile peace shattered with the Tea Act of 1773. Parliament tried to save the East India Company by giving it a monopoly, making tea cheaper but upholding the right to tax. Colonists saw through the scheme. Accepting the tea meant accepting Parliament's authority. In Boston, the standoff exploded. Colonists, disguised as Mohawks, dumped 342 chests of tea into the harbor. The Boston Tea Party was a calculated act of protest, not a riot. London's response was swift and harsh. The Intolerable Acts closed Boston's port, put Massachusetts under direct control, and forced colonists to house British soldiers. These laws were meant to punish, but instead united the colonies in fear and outrage. If Parliament could do this to Boston, it could do it to any colony. The Intolerable Acts were the final straw. The colonies realized compromise was over. War was now all but certain. The point of no return had been crossed. The colonies stood together, ready to resist. The world's greatest empire was about to face a united rebellion. The revolution was no longer a possibility, it was a reality. The American Revolution was fueled by ideas as much as by anger. Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke argued that governments exist to protect natural rights, life, liberty, and property. These rights were not gifts from kings, but the birthright of all people. Locke's social contract theory resonated. If a government violated these rights, the people had the right, and duty, to change it. Colonists saw British actions as a breach of this contract. Men like Jefferson and Adams found in Locke's words a justification for revolution. The fight was not just against taxes, but for universal human rights. Locke's philosophy transformed colonists from subjects into revolutionaries. The revolution became a struggle for principles that would echo far beyond America. By 1776, war had begun, but the colonies needed to declare why they fought. Thomas Jefferson, drawing on Enlightenment ideals, wrote the Declaration of Independence. Its opening proclaimed, "All men are created equal, endowed with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The Declaration listed the king's abuses, proving the social contract was broken. On July 4th, Congress adopted the document, an act of treason, a pledge of lives and honor. The Declaration transformed rebellion into a universal call for freedom. Its words inspired not just Americans but future generations worldwide. The nation's birth certificate, it set a standard America still strives to meet. The power of words gave the revolution its soul. The promise of equality became America's enduring challenge. The Declaration was bold, but words alone could not win a war. The Continental Army, led by George Washington, faced the world's mightiest military. Britain had professional soldiers, a powerful navy, and vast resources. The Americans had farmers, artisans, and little training, always short on supplies. Congress lacked power to tax, leaving the army underfed and ill-equipped. Washington's strategy was survival: keep the army together, keep hope alive. The British could win battles and take cities, but not the countryside or the spirit of independence. The war became one of endurance and belief. Grit and the cause of liberty were the Americans' greatest weapons. Against all odds, the fight for freedom pressed on. The winter at Valley Forge tested the revolution's soul. Washington's army, cold and starving, faced disease and despair. Supplies were scarce, desertions common, hope nearly lost. Yet, in this crucible, transformation began. Baron von Steuben, a Prussian officer, arrived to train the troops. He drilled them relentlessly, instilling discipline and pride. Slowly, a new army emerged, cohesive, professional, and resilient. When spring came, the Continental Army was reborn. They had survived the worst, and were now ready to face the British on equal terms. Valley Forge forged not just soldiers, but a nation's resolve. The revolution endured because its army refused to break. Hardship became strength. Suffering became unity. The test of wills at Valley Forge changed everything. The transformation at Valley Forge paid off as the war shifted south. France, impressed by American resilience, joined as a crucial ally, providing money, troops, and a navy. In 1781, British General Cornwallis fortified Yorktown, believing the Royal Navy would protect him. Washington seized the moment, marching his army and French allies south to lay siege. The French fleet blocked the British by sea, trapping Cornwallis. Allied artillery bombarded the British lines relentlessly. With no escape, Cornwallis surrendered on October 19, 1781. The British played "The World Turned Upside Down," a fitting anthem for a world changed forever. Yorktown ended the fighting. The impossible had happened. A ragtag army, with French help, had defeated an empire. The United States was at last truly independent. The Revolution's gamble had paid off. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 made American independence official. But the Revolution was more than a war. It was a new way of thinking about government and rights. America was born from ideals, not ancestry: liberty, equality, and consent of the governed. The Revolution's legacy is the idea that government exists to protect the people's rights. This idea, debated in taverns and declared in Philadelphia, became the nation's foundation. The founders now face the challenge of building a government worthy of those ideals. The contradictions like slavery remained, haunting the new nation. The revolution is an ongoing argument, a struggle to live up to its promise. Its story challenges every generation to form a more perfect union. The echoes of 1776 still call us to defend liberty and justice today.